Test, test, test. All right, thanks, John. Okay, so I have a couple of announcements. It's kind of a big night, actually. This marks the end of our 14th curriculum. 20 weeks, do the math. We've been here a while. And then we start next week. The handout you got tonight is the first officially edited handout with the professional editor. Churches have been reaching out to us. There's groups that are parachurches that have been reaching out to us. We've recently made some decisions about how we're in the process of talking about how we take Prodigal outside these walls. But so I'd love for your prayers more than anything else, because I just want you to know, if it never leaves this room, we are richly blessed, right? I mean, there's been tons of people's lives changed. So we're not doing it because we need to be bigger. We're doing it because people are asking for it. And I understand there's an opioid crisis out there. So I think that there's some other marital issues outside of Dallas, I understand, and prodigals. And so if we're a help, then great. So we'd love for your prayers, the directional team on how to exactly do that. And then we'd also love to have, this is it. This is the last time before we publish a book, and one day somebody comes in here and we hand them the Prodigal book with 20 lessons and the newcomers and the welcome packet, and it's all one book and they take it. And that's what we want it to be next spring. So you get an opportunity to be there and help us. So if there's something content we're missing, I mean, you have fresh eyes. We've been doing this for a long time. So if there's content we're missing, if something misses the mark, just let us know, because we're all in this together, right? We all have prodigals. So it's a big night. So and next week we'll go through all that. So give us feedback. The other thing I wanted to tell you was, as I told you, Jenny and I was speaking overseas, and I had the opportunity, a couple, 3 months, somebody at the last minute said, hey, would you be interested? There's a meeting we'd love you to speak in St. Petersburg. And the thought of going to Russia was just, the timing couldn't have been more poor, because we just closed the consulate and kicked all the, it was just like, there's no way you should go to that. But I read this book a long time ago, and in my journey, it's called The Return of the Prodigal Son by a guy named Nouwen. And we put it on the bookshelf tonight. It's opening up, and I gave it to the leaders who didn't have one. And like most things, it meant a lot to me when I read it. And then I always thought that if I could go to the Hermitage and see the Prodigal painting, I wanted to do that. So it was really for that reason that I said yes. And so Jenny and I went, and we had a great time. And so I just would recommend this book. When you read the book, the painting is there at every page. And the cool thing about it is, just a background on it, it's not like the most important book I ever read, but I just think it speaks to where a lot of people are in the Prodigal, and I would highly recommend it. But I heard that guy speak one time, and it was unbelievable. And I didn't know who he was, and I found out who he was. And he was a professor at Harvard, and he was had fully tenured Catholic theologian at Harvard. And he saw this painting, and it changed his life. And he went to the Hermitage. He sat in front of it for 3 days. It's the story of the parable of the prodigal son. And the book talks about Rembrandt, who was a prodigal, and how he painted himself into the picture in Rembrandt's life, the prodigal parable, and how it changed his life, where he went to Toronto, and for the last 30 years of his life, he just served disabled people that had no idea who he was. And out of that disabled experience of 30 years, if you've never read Henry Nouwen, you're missing something. So it's out there if you're interested in it. So I just thought I'd throw that out there to you. So I got to see the painting. It was fabulous. I didn't spend 3 days there, though. So tonight, we're going to talk about case studies. So for the newcomers, I'm glad Jim told you this could probably be a scary night and cause a pit in your stomach. But just realize that you don't get here on the first night. And so what we're going to do, in the past, what we've done is heard people's stories, and we put diagrams together. So we put diagrams together, and And we've been talking about it recently, and I've been into some groups, and people would say there was some confusion on how you use your diagrams. But just know from our perspective, the groups that do these diagrams really well, and we're all learning, leaders and you guys alike, we didn't ever have a problem with people coming to Prodigal. We had a problem with people staying in Prodigal, and the problem was that they weren't taking ground. They weren't able to do their plans. And so one of the issues was we discovered, one of our leaders said they're overwhelmed. They don't even know where to start. So he started doing their plans for them. And the way he did that was he basically came up with a diagram that would paint a picture of where they were. It was like, this is your life in one PowerPoint slide. This is where you're screwing up. This is where you're doing well. These are the issues you have to work on. And every week, it's there. So you can't run, you can't hide. If you're not on the same page, if you have a bad boundary, it's right there. So we don't have to reinvent that and deflect and hope people will forget so that we don't actually have to do something. And you know what happened? People kept staying. People started staying. And now we need new leaders, and our groups are big, and the room is full. And so I want to just tell you tonight what we're going to do is we're going to take a couple of diagrams from some people, and those people out there know who you are. We thank you for letting us use this. And we're not going to use their names, so this is my most nervous because I don't want to make a mistake and give away an identity here or something. But I've checked it and rechecked it. My fear is that somebody's name would be up there. But anyway, my heart's in the right place. We're going to try to do the best we can. And so be gentle with your comments. Be truthful with your comments, because I think the people that put this up here want to know what you think. And everything that we're telling them tonight is directions. You know, we're giving them direction, but we're not giving them specific directions. Let me clarify that, because ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not in their community group. I'm not walking with them every day. I filled in with a group last week, and there was some direction I gave, but I'm not going to sit there and give them specific direction. So with that, that's what we're trying to do tonight, so that you get more encouraged about asking your leader, hey, can we work my diagram? Can we get a plan out of this thing? So we're going to try to show you what it does here. So the first one, if I can read this, I'm going to have to come over here because on my slide this is too much. So I'm just going to read it, and the main thing I want you to see is I'll summarize the diagram in a minute. But the wife was the youngest of 4 children, accepted Christ at the camp at the age of 10, went to church with best friends. Her parents fought. The dad was an alcoholic. Al-Anon educated and strengthened her and her mom. The dad went to AA and then never drank again after going to AA, so that was great. But she met her husband in college, married him, and they have 3 kids, and they now regularly attend church, and they're in a re-engage class, working on their marriage. So they had a sweet life until this last Halloween in 2017, when their son, who had been awesome and no signs of worry, came home drunk, and I think really drunk, if I heard the story. And so she trusts the Lord to carry her through the storm. So her, as a wife, she's in a marriage covenant, which is the green circle. She's a believer, so she's in the yellow God box. And the husband grew up in a family that regularly attended church, baptized prior to going to college, met his wife, married in a childhood church, raised and baptized their children there. But he couldn't relate. Interesting, he couldn't relate to the idea he heard about a personal relationship with Jesus. And it clicked when he taught a 5th and 6th grade Sunday school. I was going over this with my wife, and that's her story, right? I mean, my wife's story is so precious that I think I can tell it. Grew up in Church of Christ Science, and I didn't care because she was so pretty. And so... and I really wasn't following Jesus very close anyway, so at that time. So we went there, but anyway, it was funny. We went to Northwest Bible, and she started teaching Vacation Bible School. And one day she came home and teaching Vacation Bible School, was it 4 and 5-year-olds, or what was it, babe? I don't know, whatever it was. She got the message for the first time clearly, and so it really reminded me, and I just think that's an awesome story. But anyway, I divert. But anyway, I'd like to say the gospel's not hard is the message there. We just make it hard. So I'd like to say that since I've been a close, consistent follower, but it's been episodic. And so this is a guy that, look, grew up in the church, whatever, at age 41, teaching Sunday school, got it. admitting he's been episodic. I love this guy. You know, I mean, he's honest and he is open, and that's who does well. So the most recent was when John Elmore spoke to our son about a way to walk with Jesus. And it clicked with me and transformed my walk in a way I've never experienced. So guess, right off the bat, he didn't say it, but what did he figure out? This was about him, right? This whole thing was about him. His son's challenge right there was a way that God got his attention. I think that's pretty cool. And that's why I love for people I want to see what they say, because when I paraphrase it, I may miss some important facts like that. So anyway, it clicked with me, transformed my walk in a way I've never experienced. And each morning I start now with a word, prayer, more word driving to work, being aware thoroughly through the day, etc. So we got two believers in a covenant relationship walking with God. They have a son who's 18 and two daughters, 23 and 24. The son, 18, is the prodigal. Their mission statement is, just to summarize it, they want to glorify God. Their fears is their fear is not knowing and following God. Their prodigal not knowing and following God. Fear of him getting hurt or hurting someone with his car or under the influence. His becoming an addict and not reaching his God-given potential. His giving up in a hard heart. So I'm going to come back to the fears in a minute of the wife. And the husband's fears are letting those around me down. Family, employees, partners, afraid of the eternal consequences of family members who are not believers. And then, so we're going to talk about their fears of the wife and the husband. Just a little bit. Because it's important, you know, the reason we ask all those things, because it's important to know the fears if you're trying to make a plan out of this thing. I'm going to come back to the why plans fail here in a second, but the first step is to, like, if you work your diagram, then the first week there's a lot going on, so you're trying to really focus on you. You know, the hard part is you want to talk about the prodigal that week, but you're saying, hey, look, wait a minute. Where are you? What are your fears? What's a win look like? What's your personal mission statement? What's your story of grace? And all of that right there, you know a ton about the family right there. And in that diagram, every child in the family is a believer, 3 kids, the son's a prodigal, and now all we need to know is what the prodigal situation is. So the prodigal situation is that on the right is that he came home, and the issue there was underage drinking. And here's the issue is that when he drinks, he doesn't just drink, he gets really, really over the top drunk, okay? And I think that's a significant statement of that. He's rebellious and he has no remorse when he's caught, and he lies. He's hard-hearted and he's on meds for ADD, and that's the situation, and he's about to go off to college. So some of the questions. So the point is that if your leader says, like if you have your story of grace and your personal mission statement, and you're coming out of open group, your leader gets that information. So what they can do is say, okay, this is what you told me. Is this right? And here's some questions I have. And the questions that the leader had was, is he active in any church youth group? Or have any mentorship at church? And the answer was no. Does he believe that you will actually enforce the existing consequences, like remove a truck? And the answer was yes. I think they did remove the truck. And so if I get some of the details wrong, I want the people to forgive me, because I'm trying to figure all this out from square one. So, but I think the point, how will he spend his summer prior to attending college? Does he live at home to get a job, service opportunities? Well, he got a job, and he's actually apparently very good at it. And if he's arrested for a DUI, will you rescue him for jail? And they said no. Will you pay for his fraternity membership? That's one of the things we're going to talk about tonight. Are you in agreement that boundaries and consequence need to be put in place for college? And the answer is yes. And that's what they really want to know about tonight, is that they're going off to college. It's a very common scenario about someone that you're not sure. I think this young man makes good grades, better than average. not number one in his class, but much better than average, has a goal and a vision to be a professional and have a postgraduate degree. So he has all those visions. So the question is as we're talking about tonight, so let's say we've walked through that in our group. Right there we had in the first week, they talked about step one. And step two, they talked about the prodigal. They ask all these questions. So if you were to come to your group, the group should get this printout. And you get to ask questions. And what I've seen dynamically in the groups that work is you get to ask questions like there's some things on here, like for example, let's just throw it out. Is there anybody that's reading that, if you were in their closed group, you would have a question to ask me or ask the person? Yes.
My first question is the relationship between the daughters and the son.
Okay, so somebody in your community group just said relationship with sibs. Okay, the point of that is I don't know. I'm not going to be able to answer that tonight. But here's the thing. When someone in the group asks that question, it shows empathy, it shows caring, it gets them involved, and that's the whole point. It gets clarification. And so the point is that you may actually go back on some of these diagrams and realize that that original diagram that was a proposal made by the leader needs to be tweaked a little bit. There may be a consequence that's not enforced. There may be a boundary that needs to be set. There may be but the point is, once you work it out over 2 or 3 weeks with your group, the group buys in. You know they care. You know your leader cares. And somebody's actually, you've come to have a plan. And so, you know, as my dad used to say, screw your wig on, here it comes, right? I mean, it's, we're going to have a plan. And so that's why people stay, because they don't need another social engagement. They're going to try to have a plan. So with that being the case, I'd love your ideas on, is there any other questions, though, before we do this? Yes?
Can you go back to the last one?
I can. Wait.
On number 4, if he's arrested for DUI this summer, will you rescue him from jail? I think it leans too specifically towards jail. What about attorney? What about fines, consequences? I just think, not that there is a right or wrong answer, but there needs to be some more thought put into that. Because in all honesty, with a DUI, you might be in jail a night or two. And so you're saying you're not going to bail him out immediately, but what about after that 24 to 48 hours?
Okay, so as Jim was saying, community's going to serve a casserole. Now, I want to make it very clear, if you're serving me, no fruitcake, casserole. So Jim was talking about that, but the community is not only for the casserole, but the casserole in that casserole is made up of grace, and it's also made up of truth. Because I would argue, unless you've been through hell and back like Lauren has, and like many of you have, people that are really strong believers that are giving you advice are not going to give you that advice. But that's unbelievably great advice, because you know why? She's right. I mean, okay, so the specifics. That's why when you leave here tonight, say, I'm going to go out and get a plan. Okay, it's great to go out and write down some plans, but please come back on people who, and run it past people who have been there, because that's the question you need to ask. What are you going to do after you get them out of jail, or you let them sit and they get out on bail on their own? Are you going to pay for an attorney's fees? Are you going to do this? And is it going to be a public defender, or is it going to be a private attorney? And those are real issues that you need to think about proactively. So I know that causes pits in people's stomach when you ask that, but that's why we're here. So that's really a great point. Anything else? Larry. The prodigal's 18. 18, and so the prodigal's 18 and about to go to college. Yeah. Anything else?
Jay, yes. In that he's driving a car and possibly might incur a DUI, might ask, is he paying for that car? Is the insurance in his name as opposed to the parents? Because that can be a real serious situation.
Okay.
And
okay, so I think, if I'm not mistaken, and it doesn't matter, we don't need to clarify it, but I don't know the answer to that, but let's just, for the purpose of our discussion, say that the parents are paying for the car and it's their name. but he was driving the truck. They took away the truck for a while, and I don't know if it's back or not, but the question is, should he go to college with the truck at this point in time? And that's one of the things we want to talk about. But I'm just going to make up an answer, even if it's not right, just for the purpose of our discussion. But I know the people here tonight are taking notes, and you're making them think about things they need to think about. What else? Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Also number 4, it says this summer specifically. How about when he's in college? Will you rescue him?
Okay, any DUI at any point in time. Right. So what happens when he goes to college? All right, I'm going to assume that if he gets arrested for a DUI at any point in time, we're as a group, unless I hear a dissent, going to make the same consequences no matter when that is, summer, college, or whatever. Okay, so let's go forward. So the questions we're going to talk about, they want your opinion on how do we monitor this? So in other words, he's made good grades, well above average, good enough to get in to the best school in the country, Baylor. And so, so you can't say anything more. I like him already personally, but that's just me. But they're actually being proactive. And what happens, you know what's going to happen. He's going to want to join a fraternity. He's going to do this, that, and the other. So what do we do there? So it's all the same thing. And so does he go for a truck? Does he go to college with a truck? What kind of support do we give him? Should he work? What are my boundaries and consequences? And this monitoring and controlling issue is what they're asking. How do I monitor this? How do I control this? So, thoughts? Yes, ma'am. That's you.
The fraternity part, I would say absolutely not, because of the reputation fraternities have for being party atmospheres. But he doesn't seem like he's the kind of kid that's going to be complacent and agree to everything they say. So it's almost like you give him a choice. You know, if you want our support in whatever, not the fraternity, but whatever kind of support they can give, then you have to follow these guidelines. If you want to do this on your own and not listen to one piddly word that we say, then you're on your own. But I would say no to the fraternity, at least till he proves himself, proves that he can be responsible and not continue his drinking. Because it all doesn't matter, those good grades he got, they will go out the door if he gets DUI or kicked out of school for being drunk or whatever.
Okay.
I have a question about the fraternity. Like, I know that Baylor has a huge Christian community of folks. So is it a Christian fraternity, or is it one of the regular fraternities?
Yeah, we're assuming that this. Yeah, as I said, this is a. There's no drinking at Baylor allowed. So this is just a theory. This is just purely theoretical. Okay. So.
What was your nickname?
Yeah. My nickname in college was the Keg, I'll have you know. So it's a true story. So at Baylor. So anyway, so let's put the fraternity up there. But I really let's go back and get a little more basic, because fraternity you can't pledge to the second semester anyway. So let's figure out what kind of monitoring. What would you say are some reasonable boundaries and consequences? I mean, you could even make the argument. Does he go to college? I mean, he's passed his grades, but he is of all those issues before. Remember, there was issues with that prodigal. I think there was only about 5. How do you determine? What advice do you have for the parents to determine? This is a kid that's gotten low A average, better than most. He thinks his parents are stupid and he's rebellious at 18. He's been caught drinking 6 times. Every time he's been really drunk, rebellious, and lying. What would you tell them? What's the difference between boys being boys or you've got something to worry about? Any thoughts on that? Yes, sir.
It seems a maturity issue that's happening. Yeah, he may have made good grades and all that stuff, but I would question whether or not he even needs to go to Baylor the first year, if he shouldn't maybe go to a community college and grow up a little bit and show his parents that, hey, I'm gonna be mature, I'm gonna be responsible, and, maybe he's not ready to go off on his own.
Okay. Jim, I want to respond to that, but Jim, any other thought?
Well, I'm an old coach, and there are some people that are just not ready as freshmen to play varsity. They're not ready to play JV. They may not be ready to be on the team. So in that relationship, it's really, really important that the parents are realistic of the past. And if they ignore that, it's all going to be, man, you're foolish. Because they're saying okay to a lot of things that he can't handle. And it's the same way in the coaching business. You have to get a reality of what this kid can do.
Okay, so I will say that I know these people, and they are very concerned. They are absolutely not looking the other way. And I would almost tell you that if you think about some of the stories in Prodigal, if my kid had only gotten drunk 6 times in high school and made low A's, I don't think I would come to Prodigal personally. Now, I'm just telling you, I just don't think I would have. It took flunking out of college, cocaine addiction, and a whole lot more than that for me personally. So I will tell you, these parents are seriously concerned about this. They had a kid that grew up in church. They want him to walk with God, and they're really seriously asking for that answer. So I think that these kind of things are going to be walked through with their community, here in Prodigal. But I wanted to say there's several points, right? Does he even go to college at all? Which would be, because when you say, if you told me what you told me and I'm in that room, I guarantee you what he's going to say is, you guys are Mennonites. Everybody, you should be happy that I'm your son. Everybody else is smoking pot. They get drunk all the time. They're having sex. Come on. I am the greatest kid that's going to this high school. I guarantee you that's what they're going to say. And he might be right. But my point is that they have to be prepared for that response. And so they have to walk through their community group to say if he's going or if he's not going. So that gives them something to think about. But let's assume for the purpose of this discussion, they realize that, hey, for the most part, he's been good. And whatever it is, if he did go to college, what would be some boundaries and consequences that they could set if he did? And we haven't decided that for him, but we got to have that option. So what are some boundaries and consequences? What are some things that you might put in place if you said, here you're going, and this is what we're going to do? Car, support, boundaries, consequences. Let's throw out some possibilities. Yes, sir?
You have monitoring and controlling. I don't like the controlling. But what if, is he going to have an open-ended credit card? Are they going to pay for everything? You can control some of the things he does in his off time, his play time.
Okay. Payments, full to, let's say if it's full, or whether he works and pays a portion of it. Does he pay books, or does he pay whatever keeps him busy and disciplined, or whatever, or somewhere in between? Those are the things to think about. What else? Anybody else have any thoughts? Yes, sir. But it has to be given by the kid, right? Yeah, yeah.
And because you see all the comments from the professors, you see all the comments from the teachers, and if he's not attending school, it's going to show absent. If he's not making grades, it's going to show zeros on quizzes, zeros on daily grades, and that's how you can monitor.
You can also run into trouble like we did. Our son just decided to drop classes.
Right.
That's kind of, when I asked him,
Yeah.
because I went, and this is my son.
Right. So you're monitoring drop-in classes. You're monitoring. That's one way to monitor it. And so, anybody else? Any other thought? Yes, Sherry.
I have two thoughts. One is seeing if you can get them to agree to join like AA or something like that and get involved with a sponsor. Or maybe there's some kind of like breathalyzer that he could do on FaceTime or something like that at certain times of the day or the week. Or I don't know how long that would stay in your system and show up, but some kind of physical monitoring.
Okay.
And then if he's not, for example, if they have 1 year left, if he doesn't show that he's clean over this year, then making the decision that he's not ready to move forward.
Okay. Yeah.
I would even maybe say, starting out like, listen, this is semester by semester basis. We're gonna let you try this semester, but you gotta do X, Y, and Z to prove that you go the next semester.
That's how you'd prove it, semester by semester. It's no.
Not only making sure that he gives you access to his grades, but access to help, so that if he ends up drunk and ends up at the health center there, that you can have access to know that as well.
Okay. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
A truck, a car, I think the downside to giving him transportation way outweighs the upside. There's Uber, there's Lyft, there's no lot of upside for him to have transportation. So I would, we never let our kids take a car, so that's kind of a bias on my part. And the other thing that, as far as boundaries go, then it's an awkward I think for a lot of kids, it's a tough conversation because they've never thought about it. But what are you willing to pay for? Like, how many semesters will you pay for? Will you pay for summer school? If they drop a bunch of classes and they've got to go to summer school, are they responsible for that? And if they are they going to be responsible for the living expenses while they have to go to set classes? Just kind of work through big picture and boil it backwards, if that makes sense.
Okay.
If you go back to the diagram, I like to see the mom's fears.
Yeah, let me read them. The mom's fears were fear of my prodigal not knowing and following God, fear of him getting hurt or hurting someone with his car or influence, his becoming an addict and not reaching his God-given potential, his giving up, and a hard heart, fear he might have a hard heart. I guess I would assume that's not only to them, but probably to God. Yeah.
I'm thinking you might start some of the conversation around some of those fears that are relevant to the prodigal, because my mindset on this is about stewardship, which I think is kind of the direction you're going down. My question, it sounds like they've already decided they're going to send him off to college, so they determine it's a reasonable stewardship for them to take their resources and invest in this. The mom is obviously fearful that his alcohol use is going to lead to some full consequences, not to mention it could kill him. Because if he's drinking to the point that he's passing out, he probably has some kind of physical intolerance that's really dangerous for him. So I'd probably start building around there and come back and look at, the fact that he can be successful academically at college is the reason I'm concerned at this point. Because I would be concerned that he's going to kill himself. He's already drinking under A-level scrutiny, so all the system and controls that parents have put in place right now, they send him down 90 miles or however far it is to Baylor, out of sight, out of mind. I'm just not sure I can trust him because he hasn't demonstrated that. So
Yeah.
I'd probably start coming back and talk to them about where their fears are, and how does that fit in with what they think they should be doing with the things they have control of, because they're not going to be able to control them.
Right.
Going back and setting up all these things and making things more exhausting for them seems to me to be
Right. So, yeah, so I think it's just in the time allotment. We got one more to go through here. So what I was going to say was, Larry makes a great point. I wanted to come back to fears, and that if you look at fears, I'm going to read those off again, and I want you to think in your mind how many of those things that she's worried about, can she control? Of him not knowing and following God. Getting hurt or hurting someone with his car. Now, she can control that. She can control that. So to me, of all the things up here, it seems like if you have a trust in a control issue, to me, I'll never give directions, but that's pretty close. I mean, the truck I'd really question on a kid. And I think of all those things that would worry me, and I'm not saying my answer is the right answer, but just my experience in doing this for a number of years, the thing that concerns me the most about that prodigal is lying. Of all the things, it's lying. Because if you got a kid that's an alcoholic and he doesn't lie, he's got a chance. If you got a kid that's an addict or whatever, but if they're lying, you got no relationship. If you're lying, you can't trust them. And then I don't know what they deserve if they're lying. And so to me, and that's totally changed in my whole paradigm over the last 8 or 9 years of this ministry, is the importance of lying. You could have a kid that's really struggling, and if they're truthful and they admit it, there's a huge chance of them doing better. Yes, yeah, Joanne.
I agree with almost everything everybody has said. But our experience is that very concerned parents have still not let go of their own desires for their prodigal. And we can come up with a perfect plan that they cannot execute because they haven't yet dealt with their own issues in relation to the prodigal.
Yeah. So let me repeat that. Joanne said that the issues is they haven't, we've got to be careful that our plan our expectations for our prodigals are realistic, they're not. We want to make sure it's their plan as well. It's how God designed them and how they're going. Now, I do think this young man, I asked about it last night or the night before, that he's got very high aspirations, which is a good thing, and sometimes we'll keep prodigals in line. But I would just say as we wrap this up a little bit, if I had some advice to the parents personally, and that would be, remember who the plan is for, and so there's monitoring I'm going to give you one extreme. I had an attorney, I always like to tell this story because it's the most blaring, it's the best example I know of, but there was an attorney and his wife, and we had this kind of planned counseling. He came with literally, he's a great attorney, and he had like 4 or 5 pages of this plan, and it was a really godly man and a godly family, very much like this, but his monitoring was on Monday morning at 6 o'clock before I go to work, I'm going to call him at Texas Tech, and we're going to go over Nehemiah this fall. I mean, I'm not making this up. And we're going to go over Nehemiah, and then we'll have questions. And then on Thursday morning at 6, we'll do that again. His brother's living with him. We're gonna make sure that he did. I mean, it was all of these things. And after he got through, he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Man, I'm tired just listening to it." and I said, "How about this?" He had I think he made some honor societies. I said, "How about this?" He makes a 3.5. Because you want to monitor if he's sleeping with his girlfriend who goes to tech or this, that, and the other, who's out drinking. Just like somebody said, if he's drinking, if he's getting a DUI, if he's doing that, he's not going to make his grades. And so the least monitoring is, Mom and I are going to have a good time while you're gone. Don't let the door hit you. 3.5 in December, or you're not going back to college, or 3.0, or whatever it is. Now, that's the least, that's the most liberating thing you could do, and that's giving God all the trust to say, there is a life out there. If you think you can do it by drinking and carousing and doing what you want to do and lying and cheating and stealing, you're 18 years old. I've taught you how to live. Go do it. And then you trust God. And all those things are going to be hard for Mom because she's worried about him not knowing God and getting hurt, becoming an addict, giving up, having a hard heart. Those things could happen. But they have trained him for 18 years in a church. So you could take one extreme and say, Mom and I are going to go out and live Ephesians 2:10, the race marked out for us, and we believe you can do it. Go get them. The other thing is somewhere in between. And I'm not saying that's the right answer. I was giving you an extreme of what you could do. Because I didn't know about this online thing, and I haven't thought through that, but that's not an unreasonable thing on first glance to me. It would show the sons, he'd say, hey, look, go look at it. Go look at everything I'm doing. That'd mean a lot to me if he'd say that. And that's not hard to check once a week, or, that's not like it doesn't interfere with my life. So I could, in your group, I could see how a group could say, okay, that's good for that. I don't think I'd give them the truck. I think, does everybody get an amen on that? Yeah, okay. And because if a kid's been doing all that and he's not willing to give that up, he's not really willing to give up much, and he's immature, like you said, Jim, and he's probably not ready for freshman football, right? And so what were the other things real quick? Fraternity, not until he proves himself, sober, making good grades, and so maybe he doesn't do it the second semester. Maybe if he's in there for a year or so or whatever and he's doing great and he's not lying and he turns around, we could have that conversation down the road. So anything else anybody want to throw in? I hope that's helpful to them to think about. Yes. I had one more over here. Yes, sir.
Zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance.
Any authority, police, or school.
Okay, I think that's probably true. DUI, get picked up at school, doing something wherever, there's a zero tolerance policy, and he's out for a season, whatever that looks like, Yes, sir. Yes. I thought this was a simple one. We're getting a lot of activity here. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, do they think sending him away to Baylor is going to change things, or sending him away to college is going to change things? Because they're already monitoring, they're already controlling payments, they're already controlling everything, and it's not changing. So why sending him away? Why are they considering sending him away if those fears exist? How is it going to go away? If that's their concern, why are they opting to send him away? He's 18, so what? He's passing out drunk, and that's their concern. They're afraid he's going to kill someone. They're afraid he's going to get on drugs. They're afraid of all these things. There's wonderful schools right here. Let him live at home. Let him continue to grow. I mean, so what? You're 18. The brains are different.
Okay, and that's an argument. Okay, so the point is,
His grades is not going to stop his drinking. I mean, I can drink and go to work on Monday and
Right.
do just fine and drive drunk.
okay, all right. There's somebody in the back. Yeah.
Under the support column, I think it doesn't indicate that you agree there, but I think that there are degrees, and there's the bare minimum. You get them in school, get them the basics. The amenities would be football pass, obviously the fraternity, but any other activities or situations where he can get into some sort of extracurricular activity do not be on the table until he earns it.
Okay, so extracurricular activities would be not on the table if they earned it. So you're seeing here that a group of people that have walked in with prodigals, some people are a little more rigid, some people a little bit more not quite as rigid. And what I would tell you is, I think, so what's a person to do, right? So what are you supposed to do? So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to process it in community. And with all due respect to everybody in this room, we haven't been I'm speaking to the parents right now, we haven't been walking with you for the last year. We haven't seen you in your heart and know your son a little bit better than we know it on a whiteboard. But I do believe that all these are possibilities. They're suggestions. They're things to think about. And you pray about those things, you process it in community, and you come up with the best answer you can. And then we pray for that plan to be the right one. And the point is that remember, what God is asking you to do is prayerfully consider it. If you're abiding by scriptural guidance in community, if something goes amiss and you have to readjust your plan, welcome to the world. He's going to judge you on obedience. If there's something you really think you should be doing and you can't do that, then you haven't blown the trumpet in Ezekiel 33. You haven't done that. So part of that's going to be on your head. So I'm just saying there's no right. I mean, I can't tell you that there's a right answer and that when you get it, the lights are going to go up here and it's all going to line up and that's what you do. It just doesn't work that way. But I think that all the advice that you're giving him, I want you to think about this. all the advice, okay, without getting political, I shouldn't go there. I'm not going to go there. Okay. I'm not going to do it. So, but my point is, think about the advice that they're getting in this room. It's biblical advice. It's not going to Baylor or going there with boundaries. We're all taking drinking and lying seriously. The world is wondering what we're smoking tonight. They are. Your kid got drunk 6 times in high school, and he's making a 3-1. You're the crazy one, right? I mean, that's what the world is saying. So we're giving them good advice, okay? Anywhere in there is reasonable as long as they process it and they're obedient and they go for it. I just don't want to put too much guilt that if they don't send them to Baylor, if they do send them to Baylor, either one of those with consequences, I think they're closer to where God would have them than they would had they not been here at Prodigal. So I appreciate you going in there. This is a tough one. Is everybody getting something out of this? Okay, all right. So let's do one more, and we'll try to go through this. I think I'm not sure. Well, it's emotionally tough. Have a very devoted man here coming to Prodigal. He was born to a lower class family outside of Dallas in the Midwest, I think. Parents were loving Christian, sacrificing to give him a parochial education. He supported himself through college. He met his future wife in college. They were married 2 months after graduation, and now they've been married 53 years. His daughter was born 4 years later, followed 3 years later by a son who is now the prodigal. Also raised another girl who was adopted, whose family experienced multiple tragedies. They weren't formally adopted, but it was kind of, he feels like it's his adopted daughter, okay? And have really taken care of her over the years. That's her over there on the left, adopted daughter. But out of the family covenant, which is all in green there. Let's see here. He's an active founding member of a local Catholic community, but his daughter and son-in-law down there at the bottom are in a covenant relationship, and they're believers, and they go to Watermark. So he's been going to Watermark and the Catholic Church for a while now. And he relishes the journey God's ordained for him, and he prays he'll always put him first, and the courage to trust him in all things. And I would just tell you that I know about this man, and I've actually never met him, but I want to tell him tonight that I have really been encouraged by what I've heard about him and how he's coming and how his leaders love him and how he wants to do the right thing. So his personal mission statement is just to know, love, and serve his Lord. It's to glorify God. It's to glorify God, and I won't, in the sake of time, we could go into that if we need to. But his fears are being too weak to overcome his sinful nature. That's a pretty, I think that's everybody in the room here. But anyway, I agree. Trying to stay in control. His fear is trying to stay in control and failing to understand that God's in control. So he doesn't want to control it, but he struggles with that. Failing to trust God 100% of the time and 100% in all circumstances and situation. And then he said, a win is to live long enough to see God's plan for my prodigal manifest in his daily life. That would be a win for him. Okay. So why plans fail, why his plans fail are, he's had numerous written and unwritten plans before, but most, if not all, were developed in a vacuum. Many end up in a binder or a folder collecting dust. My plan development skills are well above average, but my execution skills and discipline lag far behind. I'm worried that wife and I are not mutually developing our story, mission statement, and plans. She does not, loves her, great woman, hadn't been to Prodigal. We're not on the same page. And I can tell you, it's very, very hard for him. That's the crux of the matter here. A wife that he loves dearly that's not on the same page and not coming to Prodigal. So the prodigal behavior is that he is, I believe, in his mid-40s. He's an attorney. He's separated from second wife, separated after both lost jobs when a startup company failed. He's depressed. He suffers from depression. He's angry over job loss, diagnosed with depression. He's threatened suicide several times. The parents called police. It really escalated this last spring when the parents called police after an out-of-control drunken outburst in March 2018. He was sent to a psychiatric hospital for 4 days. The specifics of that are that told him he didn't have insurance. They cuffed him anyway, took him there, and ran up a large bill. Okay, so that'll come into play in a minute. He's taking medication for depression and sleep issues, but he sometimes doesn't take it because he can't pay for it. He sees a psychiatric counselor every 2 or 3 weeks when he can pay for it and get there, but not consistently. He was a heavy alcohol user, but he's moderated in the past few months and seems under control recently. He's been respectful to the parents over the past few months. I think not quite so much just in the last week or two, I think, but it's coming up, slide's coming up. He lacks motivation. He's not seriously pursuing employment, has no income other than what parents pay for work around the house. And apparently he's very, very good at woodworking, and that's probably where his passion is to be a woodworker and not an attorney. And apparently he's very good at that. So he actually does some really good work around the house, and he's paid for that. He owes the psychiatric hospital and has bitterness toward his father for having him committed to the hospital. So the prodigal son is a believer, question mark. I don't know that for sure. He and his wife are both attorneys. That's the prodigal son and the ex-wife or the wife. Depression, he's upset. And actually one of the things that upset him, I think recently, or maybe it was in March, and maybe that's why he spun out of control in March, but I think he might have read something his dad had written, or he overheard something, but somehow he realized that his dad viewed him as a prodigal. And that flipped him over the edge. And he lost his job. Parents called police, went to Green Oaks, now big bill from Green Oaks. Some of this was repetitive, I apologize. So they're providing food and shelter right now at their home, but no money, except what he gets for work around the house. He's moving out on August the 8th. And so Dad would love to have him go to Regen, but I don't think he's having anything of it right now. So the husband and wife now we're going back to not the prodigal, but the person attending prodigal, the parent, the husband. The husband and wife are not on the same page. The wife is the weak link as she is biased more heavily by the depression. And we get a lot of nodded heads, we get that. Wife is struggling with giving God control and not coming to prodigal, and doesn't want to talk about it much. I think when the husband comes home and tries to talk about it, it's, how about those Cowboys kind of thing. So husband is concerned consequences will mean consequences for his son. I think this is the crux. The husband is concerned that he's beginning to realize what needs to be done. And he's very concerned of a wife that he loves for 53 years, that if he enforces consequences, that it will mean consequences for his relationship with his wife, a great woman that he loves. And I think that's a really tough issue for him right now. So the plan would be, what would be boundaries and consequences? The husband actually told him, you have outstayed your welcome. His wife was upset about that, although he's planning on leaving on August the 8th. If the son moves out and struggles, if he does move out on the 8th, struggles and wants to come back, what does the husband do at that point without the wife's support? Those are the issues. So I won't ask any more questions just in the sake of time, but any thoughts on that you have from the audience? I know it's a very emotional issue for him and for you guys, but whatever, there's still truth, and that's what he's asking for. And I can tell you, this guy is a very successful man. He gets it, and I think he knows what to do, and I think he would love your advice on where the issues, what are the big issues that he's facing? Some of them may be obvious, but I think it's important to write those down. What are the things that we're going to have to address here? Yes, sir?
Would the wife consider counseling without him?
Okay, the question would the wife consider counseling? I'm going to guess that not right now, because she won't come to prodigal, which is not as you know, our fees are cheaper than counseling. So I don't know that she'd go to counseling. I'm just going to make that assumption. Anything else? What other things? Yes, sir?
The first case, you said that the husband came to Christ because he went to Sunday school, and God, you mentioned that God got his attention that way. On this case, the father struggles with trusting God 100% of the time. Now he's facing a situation where it appears like God's tapping him on the shoulder that you trust me now. So I think this is a similar situation that you should consider, that God's trying to work on him and to trust him with all this, with his wife and his prodigal.
Okay, so let me repeat that. So I think there's a lot of truth in what you were saying, is that he said one of his fears was that, you know, maybe not trusting God 100% of the time. And is God saying, hey, do you trust me? You trust me to, you know, I'm just going to throw this out, but you trust me to deal with your prodigal, because your prodigal acts up and your prodigal is not walking with God, and your prodigal is mad at you, and that's almost an easier situation to get your arms around, because they frustrated you over those years. You've thrown money down a hole, helping them out, and this, that, and the other. The biggest issue, the elephant in the room, is what? Right. So he's got a wife that's a prodigal, right? So that's the problem. And his wife hasn't seen that looking over his shoulder yet, right? That he wrote about his son, and his son saw it, but his wife hadn't seen it, and that's what scares him to death, I think. With me, I get what he's saying, but the elephant in the room is that you got two prodigals, and God is saying, you know, do you trust me with one, but do you trust me with the other one? Do you trust your relation, that I'll handle your relationship, that I'm going to be there for you in troubled times? Is this the mechanism of action to where your wife gains a relationship with me that she's never had in 70 years? Or this might be the last opportunity that she's going to have to really know me like I want her to know me, to let me feel my love for her. And maybe this is the mechanism. I don't know that for sure. I mean, she could live to 95 and there could be more years, but I would just have him think about those things, because do you think there's any question that the prodigal son of 43 years old knows that mom is the weak link with dad? There's no question. And he's going to use it until it's not there. It's just like in my story when my son threatened suicide, and I said, I'll hate that. It'll change my life forever, but I got to go on, and I can't stop you. And that threat was gone. And so it's very difficult, but I think those are the decisions he's having to work through. Yeah, Joanne? Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. I think that's a good point. And I can't answer that, but I think it's worth making sure that if he's in the room, he hears this. And that is that have you at least taken that first step to say, I'm not going to let you walk away from me tonight. You owe me that after 53 years. I'm going here and I'm working on our son. I'm working on this situation. I'm trying to be what God wants me to be. And God's talking to me. And whatever he calls her, I'd call it, if it was Jenny, I'd say, babe, listen, you know, you're out here and it's killing me. And you're not listening to me. You're not trusting me. You're asking me to be your leader. I need to be your leader. It's biblically, and you're not dealing with this. And my point is that I want to tell you that I'm loving him the best I can. 43 years of doing this has led us to here, and insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I believe God's got our son, and scripturally it says, discipline your son, and that there is hope. Do not be a willing party to his death. I can run these down, but I'm going to need you on my side because I'm fixing to have to do something. And I think I'm doing the right thing here, and we're not going to let him come back in the house. And his depression is an issue, but tell me how depression with no discipline is better than depression with, what does lack of discipline do to any situation? It hurts it. A great dog is only good if you discipline him. You know, you could take the best genes in the world and that dog's going to be worthless without discipline. How much more for a human being? I think what you're saying is, could you go and express all those issues very straightforwardly to her and to try to tell him his heart and slowly but surely walk around? He's actually, I think, pleaded with her to come to Prodigal, and I don't think she wants to hear it because we all know why, right? Because she's afraid that pit in your stomach that we all get when you see plans like this. And just like the last family, I guarantee you got a pit in their stomach when you were speaking truth about should they go to college at all, right? So I don't know what that is, but I know that. I felt that. We all felt it. We've been there. So
But has he answered the question, what can I do to help you trust me? How can you get on the same page? Tell me what you need from me in order for you to be willing to at least listen.
yeah. So you're saying, what can I do to be on the same page for you to listen and trust me? I fear when he says that, she's going to say, I need you to understand and take more seriously his depression and that he's incapable of doing this. It may not be, but
And has he done that?
I don't know. I don't know. But what we're doing is what we've just done. I can't answer that question, but what we've done is given him that opportunity to think about that. Had another question? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, two things. One is, assuming that she's not going to change after 53 years, she's going to stay the same. Biblically, he needs to maybe look at what he needs to do just to go forward, not separating from her, leaving her, doing it out of love, but setting his boundaries and taking care of himself. The other thing is, my family's gone through mental health issues with a family member, and I'm just throwing this out there. There's an organization called NAMI, and we had been through so many years of it, but it's the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and it's a family 12-week course. You can go by yourself, but the support and the specific information, huge book, and it is so supportive. When you have other family members that are not on the same page with you, but that help you deal with and get through it and find the strength inside to do whatever you've got to do. And we did it through a non-denominational church. It was took place there.
Okay.
But it's just information, like
Yep.
you're saying.
Yeah, good information about a 12-week course called NAMI for medical illnesses. But I can't remember what I was going to say. Any other thought before as we wrap this up? Yes.
I was gonna say, I feel like the key thing that is missing is spiritual intimacy between the husband and the wife. And it sounds that he is trying as hard as he can to work on his relationship with the Lord. The next relationship would be Crossways with his wife. And I think it's easy for all of us sitting in this room because we've at least admitted that we have a prodigal, instead of taking the approach of why can't you see this? This is what's best, or taking the strong arm of I'm the husband, I'm going to lead this way. It's start praying for your wife and start praying over your wife, whether, out loud at night so she hears it, because obviously she's hurt and she's struggling and there's a wall that she doesn't want that vulnerability to be put down. And so that is an opportunity for your faith to come into work and for God to be put in control and to build spiritual intimacy to lead your wife well. So pray with her.
Okay, so I'll repeat that again. He obviously is working on his relationship with God, and I would tell you that, I know what I was going to say, is that I've heard that before with regard to, and I know what you're saying, and it's probably hard. It is, I don't know that it's biblical, but teaching an old dog new tricks is hard, right? I got it. But I can tell you from walking in here, I can think of 2 or 3 couples that were in their mid-70s and even 80s that came in here and had been to church their whole life and said they had never known a relationship until they actually had to lay their 50 or 60-year-old son or daughter on the line. I've seen it. And they changed. I would tell you, this man would tell you that he's changed. From what I talked to their leaders, that when he's walking through Prodigal, he's been to church his whole life, but he's seeing a relationship. He's seeing a relationship for the first time. He's seeing a God that he can trust, and he knows that's important. And I would tell him, don't give up on your wife. She may not change, and you can't change her, but I think the intimacy you're talking about, praying with your wife, is a real breakthrough if you can get him to do that. And so, in summary, I would encourage him to say, something to the tune of, "Hey, look, I'm going to say some things. You've grown up in the church. Biblically, stop me when I'm wrong. I'm to lead this family well. I love you. I'm never going to leave you, even if you walk out that door. But I believe these scriptures say that we should let our son do this. We will support him. We'll give him a way home, but he has to hit a bottom. He's capable. He's an attorney. He's a woodworker. I believe when we rescue him, we're telling him he can't do it, and I'm not going to do it anymore because I've got a race I need to run. I'm 75. How many years do I have left? I'm going to run the race he marked out for me, and I have been sidetracked with this chaos, and I'm not going to do it anymore. And you shouldn't either. I hope you'll join me. I'm not going to leave you, but I'm going to model this well. And I just that's something to think about. That's not the answer. It's just some advice for you to think about. Anybody want to correct me or jump in or whatever before we leave? Okay, so probably got 20 minutes left. I think there's enough food for thought that you could discuss these things in your closed group more intimately. It gives the people here that we talked about some time to process it with their group. And I would just tell you that I thank the person in case 2 and the couple in case 1 for allowing us to have that. For the newcomers, I'm sorry we ran a little late, but I'll bet you the Ingrams and Lisa can get you oriented fairly quickly at that back table. Thank you, guys.